All right. Good morning, everyone. This is the final workshop block for the mixtape Tau Beta Sigma series. Today we have Camille Denon. She is a life member of the Zeta Xi chapter at San Diego State University, where she earned a Bachelor of Arts in International Security and Conflict Resolution. As an active sister, Camille served as chapter president for 2 years, as well as the Western District Vice President of Special Projects. Camille has a master's degree in student affairs from Northern Arizona University. After earning her master's degree, Camille moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where she currently works as a talent acquisition partner at Food Chain ID. In her free time, Camille enjoys spending time with her dog, trivia nights, and attending sporting events. She's going to give a workshop today, and the description is wondering how to plan engaging service projects. Come learn how to keep fresh, exciting service in your chapters while also revamping your current projects. Prepare for an exciting academic year of service.
Great, thanks for the introduction, Brian. So as you mentioned, my name is Camille Denon, and like I mentioned, we'll be talking a little bit about service today. So service is one of our, I would say, great pillars that we really want to make sure our chapters have incorporated. And so it's really, this presentation is really going to take a look at how to plan good service projects, but also how to evaluate your own service projects to make sure that you don't have to reinvent the wheel as you go into this new academic year. So the first thing I wanted to talk a little bit is the why we do service. So as I was trying to putting this presentation together, I saw the mission statement and it perfectly captures why we do service. So TBS is an co-educational national honorary band sorority dedicated to serving college and band programs. The sorority operates primarily as a student service and leadership recognition society whose chief aim is to assist the director of bands in developing the leadership and enthusiasm that they require of the band. Our goals are not only to provide the band with organized and service activities, but also to give our membership valid and wholesome experiences in the organization, leadership, and social contract. So basically, when you break this down, service is the bread and butter of why we are here in Tau Beta Sigma. And so we really want to keep that in mind as you're getting ready to do your service projects and you're working with your vice presidents of service or whichever chair member you have, because we do this because this is who we are. So I'm going to show you a brief YouTube video. The video itself is like 12 minutes, but we're only going to watch a couple minutes of it. And it talks a little bit about the personal benefits of service and when we engage. So give me one moment.
Camille, we can't hear it. There's an option when you're sharing to share the sound as well. If you're able to find that.
Are you able to hear the video?
No, so there's an option, I think, when you're sharing, there's one that says like share sounds. You're gonna have to try and find and hit that.
My apologies, everyone.
No problem. No problem. I was thinking about that too. I was like, normally when I'm doing music and stuff, when you share, there's like more options or something like that. And then it just has share sound and that will hopefully do it.
Let me do a new share. Share sound, there we go. Okay.
Fundamental level, one of the things that I would point out is that we all have a place in our brain that is activated by altruism, or that motivates us to do good for others. It is a distinctly human trait as far as we can tell, but it's a really powerful need that we all have to do some good. And so doing good in the community is a really powerful way to sort of activate that part of the brain. And I realize everybody feels.
So as you see in the video, he talks to us a little bit about how it's good for our brain and our brain chemistry to do service and help others. So not only are we helping further our organization's cause, but you're also helping yourself by filling some of that need. We live in a community, and so this is a good way to be a part of that. And really be able to, as you're a member of your band and your organization, give back to the community that's hosting your university and that's hosting your band program that you love so much. So we're gonna do a quick activity. So I want you all to take about 5 minutes or so and write down all the service projects that your chapter did last year. Once you have those written down, I want you to rank them from your favorite to least favorite. And then once you've done that, we'll take a second to chat a little bit about why they ranked where they did and things like that. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to go ahead and do that. And then we'll jump back in when we're ready. All righty, how's everyone doing? Do we have our service projects? Do we need more time? What are you thinking?
Maybe like 1 more minute.
Okay, cool. All righty. So is there anybody who wants to tell us about their favorite service project from last year?
I guess I can go. My name is Celeste. I'm the VPS for Tau Beta Sigma at OU. And I felt like one of our really good ones was Crescendo. We got to interact and we got to go to a football game with one of our local high schools. And it was so much fun to get to like really interact with them. And I felt like that was really great. And I felt like in the projects that weren't as good, that's what we were lacking, was that interaction portion with other people who love music. And I don't know, I feel like that was something that's lacking in some, but when it was there, it made it really good for both the people we were volunteering and like serving with, and also ourselves.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Celeste. I appreciate it. Anybody else want to share their thoughts from their list?
I can go. One of the things I really liked was we helped for this past May, we helped plan a band banquet with KKSI at our school. It was like the first year that they've ever done a band banquet at my school, so we got kind of notified at the last minute, but like we did what we could and like had a bunch of committees going on, like handed out awards and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. This is giving back to our band.
That's awesome. Okay, reading from the chat. So Iota Alpha did a football game with our Kappa Kappa Psi brothers too, and it was really nice to get everyone there to show high schoolers that they can continue music in college. It's always fun when we get to share our gift of music with others. I feel like those are always top service projects that folks like to go back to. So when you're looking at your list, and this could be something that you're doing, you know, now or in the middle of the night or 2 weeks from now, whenever it dawns on you, really think individually about each of those service projects that you did, and think about why the ones that are in your top are in the top and why the ones that are in the bottom are in the bottom. Was it that you weren't really into the service cause? You know, if, for instance, your chapter decides we're going to build houses, was it just building its service, but was building houses my bread and butter? Or was it it was a great cause, but it was really poorly organized in the execution of the event? Like there's a lot of things of right projects could be in the top and in the bottom. So really think about particularly those in your bottom. Why are they in their bottom? And then think about if there are any projects that you wanted to do, but weren't able to, whether it was for finances, time, logistics, whatever it may be. Really think about those, because as we're going to talk about later, buy-in is very important when you're planning your service opportunities. And so if there are projects that you really wanted to do, but for some reason didn't, that might be a good way to use your energies as you're trying to come up with fresh service projects for your organization in the coming academic year. So let's talk a little bit about what makes a good service project. Some of these may seem a little simple and intuitive, but you'd be surprised sometimes how we can miss 1 or 2 steps, and missing those is really vital. So the first is an identified need. So as you're looking at your community, so your community is your band program, your university, the city your university is in. So as you're looking at your communities, what is a need that you see that is something that you can work on? Having an identified need and a clear outcome is really important. So that way you can see the full circle process of the service project. So for instance, let's go back to building houses. Okay, so I live in the city of Flagstaff. I don't anymore, but I lived in the city of Flagstaff, and the service project is, okay, let's go build some houses. Okay, so is the outcome building 1 house, 10 houses, 40 houses? Like what is the identified outcome? What do we want people to get out of this? Helps you narrow your scope and what you're doing. So sometimes we have these really great service ideas, but there's so many different possibilities of how it could end that it slows down the planning process because we're trying to go very multiple directions. If you have an identified outcome, so if I am doing a service project where Girl Scout members can get their music badge, the outcome is help Girl Scouts get music badge. So it's very specific. You know exactly what you're going in for, and you know what you need to plan for as you're getting ready for that service project. Next, you want to think about the why. So like I mentioned earlier, the why is really important when you're planning your service project because that's where your passion comes from. So you want to make sure if you, for instance, if you have a service project that you've been doing in your chapter for 20 years, so way before you were gone and you think it'll go on way after you're gone, really think about why you do that service project. Do we do it just because we've done it for so long? Or do we do it because this community needs a need and we know that this is good? So for instance, in my home chapter, we always did a service where we repainted the band ladder every year. And when you think, wow, that's a weird recurring thing. No, every year, because we lived in California and there's a lot of sun, the paint would get bleached out and our director of bands needed a fresh coat of paint on his ladder every year. So that was a service project that, yes, while it's recurring, we very much understand the why we're doing this and how it directly affects our programs. You'll want to think about timing. So I grew up in Southern California where weather is not really an obstacle. It rains 12 days a year. Otherwise, it's generally sunny. So it really doesn't, some things didn't matter. But if you're living in Ohio and it snows, you don't want to do an outdoor project where it's very cold and people are uncomfortable. So you really want to think about the timing. You also want to make sure if you're doing something in the middle of the week, your active members aren't having to go to class or band rehearsal or anything. So you want to make sure that whenever you time these service projects, it's good timing for not only the group that you're helping, but also for the people who are doing the helping. Because if you schedule it at an inopportune time and only 2 people can come, that doesn't lead to productive service project. You'll also want to think about your accessibility. So when I say accessibility, it really means how easy is it for me to get to this place? So if I live in San Diego and I want to do a service project in LA, part of this accessibility is, do we have enough cars to get people from San Diego to LA? That's an accessibility piece. Do we have somebody in our chapter that may have some mobility struggles? Are there ramps? Are there sign language interpreters if that's something that's needed? So really thinking about when I'm doing this service project, is this accessible for everybody in our chapter to participate should they want to? The last thing we want to do is create service projects that also have barriers to people participating in them. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, is the buy-in piece. In order to have a really good service project, the people who are executing the project really need to be sold on the idea and what we're doing, sold on the group, sold on the cause, sold on what we're actually doing. The easiest way to get buy-in is to have people give their opinions about what's happening. Now, I know in some of our bigger chapters, that might not be as simple as just a meeting where we can all talk about service projects, but you wanna make sure that your active members are excited and understand why we're doing the service project, as opposed to, okay, guys, we're doing the service project at 12 on Saturday, come if you can, we're gonna be helping some people somewhere, as opposed to, okay, we're helping this specific group of people. These are the tasks that we will be doing. This is the outcome that we would like to see. Join us. So you can get the buy-in and it gets people a little more excited to be doing your service. So here are a few steps, 10 steps on what you can do to really create your good service project. So the thing about these steps is this is great for brand new projects that you've never done, but it's also a good way to evaluate the projects that you already have. So I think somebody mentioned that they're doing their band banquet. So that's something that's probably going to be something that you do again in the future. And so you can even apply some of these to how we would plan our band banquet in the future. So the first thing is identifying what is needed in your band and community. There's always something. And so great way to think about this is think about your awards. So for community's sake, for music's sake, for service sake. And that's a good way to kind of categorize how you want to do projects in each area. Once you have the identified need, see what you have the ability to do. So if you're a chapter of 5, what you can do in your service project is going to be a little different than a chapter of 50. So you really want to see when you're doing your service projects, what is realistically what your chapter is able to do given your membership. And you also want to take into account that there may not be 100% attendance or things come up. So you really want to make sure that whatever you're planning is really within the scope of what your chapter is capable of doing. The third is to pick a project. So once you pick a project, and this is something that either your VP of service or your service chair will help with, is once you have that need and you know what you're able to do, then you have the ability to pick which project you actually want to work on. So let's say, for instance, a need in our band is our sousaphones are not shiny enough. The band director has stated that they want shinier instruments and it's just not happening. So what do we have the ability to do? Okay, so we have the ability to work with our music department and say, hey, we would like to clean and shine the sousaphones so that they are very shiny for next season. And the music department says, yep, we have the materials, here you go. And so now you come back and you say, okay, our service project is to clean the sousaphones. Okay. Once you have a chosen project, you'll need to develop a plan on how to execute this. So the first part of this plan is seeing how many people are going to go. So if I have decided that we're going to do the sousaphones, we want them cleaned during band camp. We need to see how many people would be available during band camp, how many people are willing to stick around after a long day of band camp, and see who's able to participate in that. Then you want to make your budget. So if you need to purchase some service, your budget's going to be $0. You show up. An example is if you do like an Adopt an Avenue, you show up, you clean up the street, and then you go home, right? But if you're doing something like a cleaning or assisting with anything that may cost you money, you want to make sure, like making goodie bags for visiting bands, stuff like that, you want to make sure that you have a budget set aside ahead of time of how much you would want to spend on the project. Then you're going to make a timeline. So timelines are going to include from when you want to start planning meetings about it to the actual execution of the project. And so you'll want to make sure you include all your meetings, when you need to have your supplies by, when you need to be in touch and receive a response from certain key stakeholders in the service project. So you really want to make sure that you have a good solid timeline and that you've given yourself enough time in your timeline. So for instance, if you want to clean sousaphones, asking for all this information the week of band camp when you want to do it at the end of band camp doesn't work. But however, if you start reaching out now, then you're giving yourself plenty of time for your staff to respond, for your chapter members who are on summer break to respond, all of those things. So you want to make sure you give yourself a good timeline. If needed, raise money for the project. Fundraising is a whole nother presentation that we can give. But typically speaking, if there are funds that you need to fundraise for, that would be included in your timeline. Although I know a lot of our chapters do have relatively low cost service projects, but that's just something to think about if you really want to do something large scale that would cost your chapter money. Next step is to do the project. Okay, end of band camp is here. We've planned everything out. Everything's going amazing. We're cleaning some sousaphones and they're nice and shiny and they are ready for the marching season and our halftime shows moving forward. So you've done the project. And then your last step, and a really important step, is to evaluate the project. So no matter how many times you've done a project, you still want to make sure that you're giving yourself a good evaluation of the project and how it went. This is important, so that way when you go to the next year or the next semester, if you do this project every semester, you have the ability to really reflect and fine tune that project. Fine tuning is what keeps projects going and keeps that buy-in piece and keeps the excitement behind the service project. So when you take these 10 steps, and I know 10 steps is a lot, but when you're really able to incorporate all 10 steps into your service project, that's going to help you build successful projects moving forward, because you're going to have all the key elements. You're going to have that identified need, you know the outcome, you know what you can do, you know when you will do it, and it helps people get organized so that way, these service projects are valuable to your active members, but also service projects aren't coming up as a surprise of, oh my God, I had no idea the service project was this week when we've been talking about this service project for a month. So this helps also with the accountability piece as well. I am a big fan of incorporating service in your recruitment. So we are a service organization. We looked at the mission statement earlier. We know how important and how core service is to us. And so I am a big fan of getting candidates involved in service early. So as one of your recruitment activities at the beginning of the year, doing a service project is a great way to show people who we are. And so those are projects where if you need more people than your active membership, this is a good opportunity to use some of your new volunteers who are interested in these projects, so you can do something a little larger scale if that's not something you're typically able to do. This is a project that you should really make relevant to your band program. Something that if I am a first-year clarinet player and all I know about TBS is that it kind of sounds like the TV station and they do fun band things, what makes this worth me going is when I can see, oh wow, this is something that really comes back and impacts me. So whether it's giving water out at practice, or having a service project where you're doing a locker room cleanup or whatever it may be, make it relevant to the program, and that way that gives people that buy-in piece before they even know who we really are. And then lastly, you want to keep it simple but fun. So service projects, sometimes we tend to overthink what they need to be, and they really don't have to. Some, yes, are going to be a little more complicated, a little more logistics, but some can be really simple, and simple is okay. Again, with service, we don't need to reinvent the wheel every time we go and put on our service thinking caps. And the idea is to really have fun while helping people. And so this is just something to keep in mind as you're looking at your recruitment and you're thinking about, what should we do for an idea? Service, because that's core to who we are and it shows people who we are. So I want to talk a little bit about evaluating your project. When you're evaluating your project, it's really easy to be like, was it good? Yes. Was it bad? No. Okay, project evaluated. We want to make sure we're asking ourselves some critical questions, as well as some questions to make things easier for you should you want to do the project in the future. So the first thing is, who is your primary contact with doing the project? So for instance, if I'm doing a project with the band program, let's go back to our sousaphone cleanings. Did I contact the director of bands? Did I contact the music shop? Did I contact the dean or their assistant? Who did I contact to get in hold of and say, hey, this is a project that we want to do. What can we do? And the purpose of this is if you want to go back in the future and do this, you already know who to get a hold of when you're going through the process. You also want to know if they're a person who is generally responsive and easy to get a hold of. Sometimes where we run into difficulties with service projects is we've identified the need, we have the perfect outcome, everything is great, but we can't get a hold of anybody from anybody of where we want to help. And that doesn't make it easier either. So you want to make sure you know if they're generally accessible or not. So that way that's something you can incorporate in your timeline if you need to. So you want to think about what time of day and year your service project was. And this is something that you can tweak. So for instance, if you're doing a cleaning the avenue and you did it in December and it happened to snow the night before, so there was really no accessibility, is it okay? Do we need to do this earlier in the semester, later in the semester? What does that look like? So you really want to know what day and year your project was. How long did your project last? So when you actually executed the service, was it a 1 hour event? Was it a 7 hour event? How long did the project take? So that way, you know, if we need to make it longer, we can. If we need to shorten it, we can. How do we adjust? Or was it the perfect length? And that's what we can tell people to expect moving forward. So how long did our project last? What was the project budget if needed? And that's something, so that way, if you're a VP of service or a service chair and you know you're going to have reoccurring service projects, you can work with your treasurer to make sure that those numbers are already included in the budget when the school year begins. How many people attended? So you want to know how many of your active membership were able to attend. If you planned a service project for 10 people and only 5 showed up, that if you were still able to do the service project, that's really great. But also, we also need to figure out why people weren't there and how we can get more people if there weren't, what was the problem with attendance if it wasn't low. So figuring out how many people were in attendance, figuring out, did those who went enjoy the project? So was it, yes, we planned the project and it turned out the project just was not what we expected and it wasn't what we were looking for? Was it the best service project that has ever laid on the foot of planet Earth? And how do we move forward with that? So really trying to gauge from those in attendance and those doing the service, how they enjoyed the project. Also, if you're working with a group, so for instance, if you're working with Girl Scouts, asking the troop leader, hey, how did the event? How did the girls like the event? How did it go? So that way you have a good idea of what the general feedback is from the project. You want to know if the project objective was met. So if we went in to clean all the sousaphones, but we only got through 12 out of the 20 of them, the objective wasn't met. We had a good start, but now that helps us figure out, do we need to plan a second date? Do we need to extend timeline? Things like that. And then really looking at what improvements you would make for your project moving forward. So for instance, if I'm planning band banquet and this year everything was great, but the decorations, I don't know, we could have done better with the decorations. So that's something that you can think about for next year of, okay, we want to increase the banquet budget for decorations so that way we can have fancier things in there. So those are things that you want to look at really objectively. And I know we can be our worst critics, but we can also be very soft on each other. So that's why it's really good to, as your service person, to have them do this, but also get your chapter feedback as well, because your chapter feedback, your chapter is really the ones who are going to be helping put all of this together. And so you really want to make sure that you have their thoughts as you are going through your projects. So overall, this is the last slide. So overall, things to think about in your project when you're creating your project. You really want your projects to be something that your chapter has that buy-in piece for, and really making sure that this is something that has value to someone. You want to think about who your communities are. So you want to think about your band program, your university, and the city that your university is in. There's always going to be a need of service somewhere. So it's really about identifying which need that you can create the greatest impact on. And then you want to really make sure that you are incorporating all those steps that we talked about to make sure that you have all the planning to execute said service project, and then finally evaluating them. So I know that this was a lot of information, but as you're looking at your list of your service projects from last year from some of your favorite ones? Were there some things that you identified with the planning process or the buy-in piece that you felt like were better than some of your service projects that didn't?
I guess for me, like band banquet is easier. Like we did other service projects, but and people participated in them and they liked them. But the buy-in piece is most notable for band banquet, since we're obviously like a sorority for the band, and people wanted to give back to the band and like celebrate a year of band. We've been doing a lot this past year, and so the band director came up to us and asked KKSI and DBS if we could help plan this, and we got like he helped us all get that buy-in piece because we're all like, yeah, let's do a banquet for the band, because a lot of us did it in high school, so we thought it would be cool to do it for our university.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of like, this is something where everybody's going to see what we're doing and it directly impacts us. And it's really exciting because I can see everybody enjoying the service that we provide. So that's a really good example and a great one to keep doing. We all love our band banquets. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you all for coming. Keep in mind, you want your projects to be simple but fun, and really think about what you want to do and what's attainable every semester. But I am here and I have any questions if y'all have to. Otherwise, that's it for today. I see something.